Welcome to the podcast, Signy Wilson.
Thank you, Christy Man.
I wonder if we go all the way back. It's coming up on 18 years, Signy, since we've known each other. It was a classroom in Vancouver, downtown, in the Blue Horizon Hotel, the most exceptional place to do transformational work, right? And lead it. I never led there. But you were one of my very first coactive front room leaders, and to this day have had one of the most impact on my heart, on my transformation, on my journey. Thank you, Signy, for who you are in this world and the work that you do.
Well, it just fills my heart with joy to hear you say that. Like, it means the world because, as you know, when you're training somebody, like, you're pouring your love in there, but you don't know what comes from that, right? Like, where it goes, where all those people, what they get up to in the world. So thank you for reflecting that back to me.
Yeah. Well, and you and I have had lots of different ways that we've tried to collaborate and make things happen. And I'm so grateful that we're going to have this particular conversation in the context of the ROI of coaching in the workplace. But what I know about you is you're going to take us to other places that will also serve the conversation and serve how we UpLevel as a collective in this moment in time. Can we start with significant living, which is part of your brand, part of who you be in the world? What is that?
100%. Well, one of the things I obviously coined it, I used my name and I turned it into my brand, Significant Living. But it's this concept for me, which is about consciously and fearlessly living a life of meaning, purpose, and passion. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so easy for people to get on the treadmill, to just kind of be oriented to what I'm going to put in quotes as success. Oh, right. I forgot that Zoom has feelings about that now.
Zoom just gave us confetti, listeners.
This idea, kind of our addiction to success, right? This orientation around looking around, seeing what matters to other people, seeing how we compare to other people, and then measuring ourselves based on what's going on for other folks. That's what I kind of have finally come to realize is our sort of orientation around success. Whereas for me, there's been a big shift over the last few years about focusing on significance. And of course, I baked my name into that, but its significance is however you define it, right? What it is for each individual person, what matters to them, what has meaning to them, what has significance to them, and using those as the measures that we benchmark ourselves against, not what everybody else is doing or maybe thinks we should be benchmarking against.
And so what's significant to you?
Ooh. One of the great things about significance is it changes over time. So, wow, I feel vulnerable saying this. So I had oriented a lot to the world outside me. What's currently most significant to me is being in my heart as much as I can, right? Like really living in my heart. And also, and that's where you would have heard I believe our heartlessness is killing ourselves or companies in the world. This way that we go away from what's the easiest way to put it? Away from our own truth, away from our own knowing, away from what really matters to us. Yeah, that is what feels significant to me now. And it shows up in terms of like how much quality impact am I having in the world around me? And by that, I mean the immediate world around me, not how many likes do I get on, social media, or, how big is my reach, or how much can I charge, but rather like what, how many of my neighbors can I ask for help in an emergency? Right. So the other thing that's really big for me right now is I've spent all this time as a teacher. I love the space of being a teacher. But I recently realized that I needed to fill myself up again and step back into the role of learner. And that's been exciting, right? Finding a new teacher, someone that I can really respect and really absorb from. And so I've been stepping into that work, and it's been so fun.
I want to definitely hear more about that and the qualities of this person. But first, being a a witness to your journey almost over 2 decades. What you just said so resonates because when I first met you, there was more significance on the external. That's fair to say, right? I remember we were even collaborating on like a TV show where you would be the life coach host, right? Do you remember that? That was so cool and such a good use of you at that time. And I remember connecting with you during the pandemic. We had like a soul sister heart to heart conversation. And it's like this unwinding. I'm sure it started happening before that, but you were starting to notice because you were not on an airplane, you had slowed down, all of these new insights into yourself. And I'm really witnessing this softening of Signy and how this, like, it's transformed, the transformation of you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the piece for me, there was a lot of things that were coming into play at that time, but definitely, the way the whole world slowed down helped me to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, one piece, as you just pointed to, was like not getting on planes every week or so meant that I had enough time to actually sit and be. And in that being, some things that had been thoughts for the longest time, like gelled and became realities for me. And that was slowing down, taking my time to do stuff, really having more time for that reflective, almost feminine quality, that we don't see so much in our world, or we don't orient to the feminine, we orient to the masculine. And so to give myself that time was a real gift, right? It changed everything for me, really.
And you talk about it as an internal decolonization. Can you tell us more about what that means? And I think that this is helpful I'm going to bring it into the context of like, I believe our world is going through something like this. And so our workplaces are as individuals. So your experience is going to be very helpful. Talk to us about your process of internalized decolonization.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many factors that led into it. I was already looking at this idea of, wow, I'm so driven by the external measures, right? And I remember coming across like a post or something that talked about internalized capitalism, and it included things like, you only see your value in how productive you are. And you don't give yourself time to rest, or if you're sick, like there's this driving, hustling, gotta go get it thing. And, in realizing that was really dominant in my life, I was looking at what's behind that. And, there's this systemic thing we see in our society, right? There's so many domination systems in our world: patriarchy, racism, Christian hegemony, et cetera. It goes on and on and on. And in fact, the leadership model I created, Femasculine, is one slice of that, right? It's like looking at the gender pieces. It's looking at, the patriarchy. And that was sort of the thing that I was excited about when I created that model. And then I was, then the murder of George Floyd, everything we sort of saw around us, like as our world started looking at these, how we dominate, like how we keep people in line.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I just started looking at what that was for me, because it's one thing to say, in our world outside us, like, oh, people have to change, we have to change how we're doing, our systems are set up, et cetera. But if I'm buying into it, then how can I be a part of helping change that? Again, I'm feeling the vulnerability of this. Like I feel sort of like I pause for a moment and I feel the rush of that. It's like, this really mattered to me.
Yeah.
And yeah. Let me just breathe into that for a second. Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of describing all the things because they were all what led up to it, but back to heart, like it touched.
Yeah.
It moved me. It changed something inside me. Yeah.
Something significant, like literally, I mean, to use the term again, but it's like been such a noticeable shift. And I do think you're modeling what our world is longing for. If we take it into the context of leaders inside organizations,
Mm-hmm.
what have you been observing over the past 4 years? And how can like what you're going through personally, or how is it influencing the work that you're offering?
Those are a couple of great questions. You might have to remind me if I answer one and then don't the other.
Yeah.
How I see it, especially over the 4 years of COVID, is that people started a lot of questioning, right? Like, am I happy? Is this right for me? Is this a good fit for me? Is this an organization I believe in? And so there was that internal process that people, again, were taking the time to explore. Mm. And, and of course, as a coaching people inside organizations, these were a lot of the conversations that were emerging, which is different from the conversations that have been up to that point, which is how do I get to be more productive? How do I get ready for that next promotion? How do I make sure the right people are seeing what I'm up to? How do I influence? All of those pieces. There was more of a reckoning, like a coming inside and saying, what's true for me? And so I think, as you say, I think there's a societal shift to recognizing that we need to actually not just be blindly hopping on a treadmill of what people tell us is what we should want, but actually do the work ourselves of what do I want? Like what's true for me, what's in my heart. And it might be the same thing that everybody's talked about, but it might not be that.
And so then how is this manifesting in the work that you're doing with leaders inside organizations?
You mean the part about like them doing this internal work of?
Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like people doing that internal double check. And not to scare people off, but I will often say to clients, it's like, well, take a look around. Like, look at some job postings, see what is out there. Not because I'm trying to get them to leave their job, but because I'm trying to get them to know what's their truth.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, so often people like go and they look, that's their homework for a couple of weeks. They look and they come back and they say, I actually made me realize I really do love what I'm doing. I just need to do it in a different way.
I do love what I'm doing. I just need to do it in a different way. So then how are you helping organizations, teams, and individuals do it in a different way?
Question. There's so many answers to that question. So let me try to focus it a little bit. There's something about, so many thoughts here, overwhelmed with them. But part of it is, I'm going to try to simplify it or reduce it a little bit here. Part of it is about mindset and part of it is about behaviors. And so often people will go into the behaviors, like, got to change the behavior. Great. You probably do need to change some behaviors. How do I do it differently? But there's this other piece that it needs to start at in order to have longevity or sustainability, is to start with this piece of what is the mindset? And that's the piece that most people will skip over, right? It's like, okay, I'm just going to change my behaviors. I'm going to slow down, or I'm going to put parameters around my working day, or I'm going to make sure I spend more time here and less time there. Or I'm going to delegate that. Those are all actions. Those are all important. But if you don't come from the mindset of why you're doing it or what about it's important, then it's, a couple of weeks from now, you're going to flip back to the old way of doing it. So it's helping people really slow down and look to what's actually most important. What is aligned with your values? What's aligned with the company's values? Where can you contribute the most? Where are your gifts and talents useful? Right. And then also, how can you negotiate so that you're not doing the stuff that is not your gift? Right. To find someone whose gift it is so that you can be, working that piece out.
So all of those things we know really help an organization move forward. But if someone's listening who it's their job, maybe they're shopping, for folks like you or methodologies to bring into their organization to help people through this process, what's the why? Like, how will shifting mindset support the business, support the organization?
Yeah. I mean, one of the key ways is engagement, right? And we get to see this, like when people are not engaged, when you've got, absenteeism or even presenteeism, like their bums are in the seats, but they're not actually giving their all. Yeah. In those situations, you don't have an engaged workforce. So this kind of the value of doing this kind of work is that then people are engaged, they are committed, they do want to be there, and they're bringing that extra energy, that extra passion, that extra heart, right? Because they're bringing all of themselves. I'm actually going to weave this into, the pieces around kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. Like when we are asking people to mask themselves, when we're asking them to pretend to not be who they are, then we create a tension where if they're not bringing all of themselves, that includes not bringing all of their gifts. Right. And that's going to impact morale. That's going to, like in general for everybody, if everybody's not bringing all of themselves. And also it's going to impact, how much people are giving. That's not just hours in the day. That's like level of energy, level of enthusiasm. Right. I do want to say in this moment, like I'm using masking. The way I just use masking, obviously there's a certain amount of privilege, like, oh, let's come to a place where nobody has to mask. And that, might be unrealistic and comes from a person who has a lot of privilege. And part of why I really love working with female leaders who have given up a piece of themselves in order to be successful in that corporate world, and I help them find themselves again, it's like bringing as much of their wholeness back into the workplace. And yeah, it won't be all of it. And it's not like, don't bring the parts that are vulnerable and, don't bring the parts that if you bring them, you will be hurt. You could be hurt. You could be exposed to something that is damaging and traumatizing. But it's like to find the balance of that. It's really important to bring what you want to bring and to keep to yourself the part that you want to keep to yourself. It's a balancing act. And I realize there's a tax to having to figure that out, that people have to navigate. And it's an important discussion to be having.
Definitely. It feels extremely poignant in this time. Your model of Femasculine, can you take us through that? I'm assuming that's part of what you do with women that are looking to reclaim parts of themselves in the workplace. Like this is a tool you use. Take us through it. Yeah.
It is a tool I use. It's, it's almost more of an idea or a concept, and then we get practical with it. There's practical application of it. But ultimately, it's this idea that we all have feminine and we all have masculine, right? It's in all of us. It's not something like men are masculine and women are feminine. I'm actually, a woman, but I run a ton of masculine energy.
As I do, yes.
Right. And so it's not related to the bits between your legs, is how I like to say it. Okay. It's actually related to just kind of how your energy system runs. So we all have feminine, we all have masculine. And the challenge has been in our world, we deify masculine. We like, oh, it's so great. They're so go-getter. They're proactive. They made it happen. They drove it forward. Boom. And then we vilify feminine. We go, oh, well, those gossiping, they're gossiping, they're backstabbing each other, they're so needy, they're whatever. But what we're not doing, what we're not recognizing is that there's a toxic version of masculine and feminine, of both. There is a distorted version of masculine and feminine. The distorted version of masculine is, domination, driving things forward, bullying, being the only voice at a meeting, etc. The distorted version of feminine is some of that we were just talking about, the gossiping, the nagging, the neediness, the kind of like victim-y energy.
Damsel in distress.
Perfect. Damsel in distress. Those are the distorted versions. And neither of those are useful. And then there's a line of consciousness or awareness. And above that, there's integrated masculine and integrated feminine. And this is where the magic lies, right?
Yes.
And so the integrated masculine is driven, it is focused, it is purposeful, it is action, it's movement, right? And an integrated feminine is collaboration, cooperation, passion, community. Got goosebumps as I'm saying it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so the value of those two, and the piece being that, that in my model, I actually got a little.
Yeah. Bring the model, and folks, we'll put a copy of this in the show notes so you can see Signy is holding up the model. First of all, it's beautiful. Yeah. Okay, great. Keep training us on it.
So the integrated feminine. And then at the very top, there's actually another layer. This isn't the title. This is another layer. That's Femasculine. And so Femasculine is essentially having the ability to flex into the integrated masculine or the integrated feminine, like the ability to do either and to know which one is needed at which time. Right. So it's that kind of place. And so the way I concretely work with it is if you are, if you orient more towards, let's talk masculine because we both do. If you orient more towards masculine, it's like go up the one side. If you dip down into, the disintegrated masculine, go back up to integrated masculine because and then work on the feminine, right? So kind of work your way over or the other way around. But the point being that our world needs both, right? This over orientation to masculine means that the only way we're going to get to balance, which is what I think is going to really serve us, is if we bring more feminine. And I've had people push back and go like, you just want me to like take over and like push masculine aside. I'm like, no, I'm looking for balance. And to do that, since feminine is valued down here, we're going to actually have to bring more feminine to get to a place of balance.
And these qualities that you spoke of that you've been deepening in specifically over the past 4 years, right? Like just to bring it back to the beginning of our conversation, it's like this softening that's happening. And it doesn't matter what gender you are. There is a calling for each of us to soften the edges, and it just looks like slowing down, right? I mean, I shouldn't say just because it's very difficult. I know it's very difficult for me, and I'm sure people that are listening, some people can relate. But the deeper listening, the slowing down, you use the words of collaborating, community. I mean, these are all of the feminine energetic quality.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Reflectiveness, the very things that so many of us were doing over, COVID. It's like, it's actually stepping more into some of that feminine and really being. There it is. There's the end of the sentence. Just being more. And I think that's something that, when I talk about heartlessness, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the lack of feminine. Like we bring so much strong masculine, which tends to orient towards the head, the brain, the logic, without as much of the guidance from our heart, which we need that balance.
We need that balance. And in the context of coaching, that's it, the ROI of coaching in the workplace. Talk to us about how the skills and concepts of coaching can develop our feminine qualities.
Well, let's start with, what I would consider the big 4 coaching skills, right? So a zillion coaching skills. You and I have taught them lots, but in my opinion, there's 4 big ones. And those 4 big ones, we can go into them more, but I'm going to start by answering your question. The 4 big ones are listening, powerful questions, articulating. Oh,
yeah, we got balloons celebrating powerful questions. I love it.
Right. Let me do it without putting my fingers in the air. Listening, powerful questions, articulating what's going on, and acknowledgements. So even if we look at those, I mean, I'm kind of forcing it here, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what I would consider the orientation of each of those. So listening is a super feminine energy to it.
Totally.
Right? It's like being receptive. It's hearing from that other person. It's hearing what's underneath what they're saying. It's like really, it's gathering. I mean, I'm energetically showing it as I'm doing it. It's like spacious.
Yes.
Powerful questions. Boom. They're forward pointing. Usually they're directive. They're short. They're like boom, 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 boom. It's got a masculine orientation.
Definitely.
When we look at the skill of acknowledgement, that's for those of you that aren't trained in this, acknowledgement is that really seeing the qualities in another human being and highlighting those for them, right? Who they are being that really stands out and makes them who they are, right? So you are courageous, you are compassionate, you are full of heart, you are thoughtful, you are dynamic, you are bold.
Yeah.
Those are all acknowledgements. That's very feminine.
Yeah.
To see the essence of another human being and offer it to them.
Definitely.
And then one of the things in the coach training, we will, have people then make sure it lands.
Mm-hmm.
That's a form of listening.
Mm-hmm. And a form of receiving the feminine quality of, can you let yourself be seen? It's such a vulnerable place, and it is the feminine energy.
Yeah. Goosebumps.
Yeah.
There should be a little Zoom thing for
goosebumps.
And then finally articulating what's going on. That's got more of that masculine, right? Like it's actually an interesting blend. It's almost Femasculine because it's saying what you see, and then or sort of seeing something and then saying it, like, so noticing it and naming it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, when I think about that, when I am coaching somebody, I'm usually teaching them those 4 skills early on in coaching so that they are using those with their teams, with their direct reports, with their peers.
Brilliant.
And the skill of articulating what's going on, of like noticing what something's happening and naming it. An example could be at a meeting. It's like, wow, we've been talking about this for half an hour and haven't made a decision yet. It's not judging. It's not shaming. It's not driving it. It's just saying, it's noticing it and saying it and offering it. Like, what do we want to do with that information?
I just love how you brought those into the context of feminine and masculine. I think that's
never done that before.
It's a new part of the model. It's awesome. And it's so practical to really bring feminine and masculine to life. And that example of articulating what's going on in a group context, meeting context, like, this is something we really need to develop in ourselves as humans right now. Because there is so much finger pointing and divisiveness and polarization, and our nervous systems are just fried. And so the littlest thing is putting people on the offset. But if we can learn how to articulate what's going on, not be attached to it, but I'm just noticing the energy just got flat. What's going on with everybody? Oh, we've been in here for 90 minutes and we need to go pee. Like, it's maybe that simple, right? It's that simple. Our biological needs are talking.
But to notice, and that's what we don't do when we're only in the masculine. We don't look around us and say, like, is everybody still with me, or what's happening?
Oh my goodness. This is brilliant.
The other thing to notice when you're saying, it's just about noticing it, like, and again, not the word just, but it's about noticing it, is this idea of integrated masculine or feminine and distorted masculine or feminine, like that line of consciousness. And it's like noticing when we fall below it, because that's the place where we're blaming, we're finger pointing, we're scapegoating, we're, all that kind of stuff, versus like noticing when we're there. That's actually how I work with it. I have people notice which one of the distorted ones they're in and then take them up above the line. Right. And it's, although it's interesting, sometimes you got to go sideways and up. You use it almost like a little playboard. You got to go over here and over there.
Yeah.
It's like come to that place where it's like, okay, I'm not in my integrated self right now. How do I come back to that integration?
We need this, right?
Yeah.
It's just humanity needs this. It's, I don't really know how we move forward if we don't offer humans, not just in the workplace, but in our schools, in our homes, like offering them these relational skills. I don't know, like, what are you seeing as far as like where we're at? I mean, it's just a light question, but like, where do you see we're at as, humanity? Like, what the heck?
What the heck? I mean, there's a part of me that's like, we should be teaching this stuff in schools. Like, let's say that, right?
Yes.
And then, as I was saying, almost the first thing I'm doing, and this is with my senior leaders, my executives, my CEOs, I'm right away teaching them coaching skills, because coaching skills are people skills. Coaching skills are relationship skills, right? So I do a lot of work in biotech startups. And, these are folks that are like, PhDs and, really great at business or really great at science, really great at getting it done, but they're not necessarily paying attention to the people side of things. Yeah. And as you start building a business from small business and then you need to scale it up, if you are missing this piece, it's just never quite going to gel and it's never going to get off the ground. I mean, it'll get off the ground, but it's never going to soar.
Right.
Right? Because you can hold it together with a small enough group of people, right? But even this, like this is distorted masculine, right?
Yeah. The contraction and the tightening versus the integrated masculine and feminine of being open, flexible, agile. Like this is again more of what's needed.
Yeah, 100%. So when you're saying, I think about that in organizations, but also to your point, like just in our community, right? Like as we start to move to a world where we're seeing how much more there is than just ourselves. And by ourselves, I mean just our own race or just our own, viewpoint, just our own sexual orientation, just our own, way we relate to our bodies. Like as we start to open to our world, these skills help us be, as you said, more flexible, more agile, more open to honoring and valuing the differences that we all bring. Using silence to punctuate the point.
Another coaching skill that's highly underrated and not used enough in this moment in time, humans.
I love that.
Yeah. There's so much that was so rich. And again, I really appreciate your personal story around internalized capitalism, decolonization, and how it works into the Femasculine model and the coaching skills. It was brilliant. And this might feel like a bit of a left turn, but it's one of the things I really wanted to get your insight on. So folks who are listening, some folks listening to this are younger coaches starting out, and there's such curiosity around executive coaching versus leadership coaching. And you wrote a brilliant article. You co-authored it with other coaches in the Harvard Business Review. What it really takes to become an executive coach. And we'll put it in the show links. But what is executive coaching and how is it different from other modes of coaching? Take us there a little bit too, because our other listeners are people who are buying these kinds of services and packages for their organization. So you've got two different people listening to this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an important question. And you and I probably both have had this experience. Because coaching is a relatively new profession, you can name yourself whatever you want at the front end of that. So early on, like about 25 years ago, there was a lot of people calling themselves life coaches, right? And they were using the word life coaching, life, to distinguish from basketball coaching and soccer coaching and sport coaching, right? But it became almost confusing for people. And there was almost this orientation around life coaching means personal coaching, right? Which might be true, but I must say life coaching has been kind of thrown under the bus. So I discourage people from using the word life in front of coaching because it actually muddies the waters a little bit.
Definitely does.
And then again, because it's a little bit new, people can name themselves what they want. You could use a niche to name yourself. Like I'm a courage coach or I'm a success coach. I mean, now that I've thrown success under the bus, maybe you would call yourself that. But, one thing I've heard when people especially are wanting to coach in an organizational space, they'll often describe, I'm a leadership coach. And I think that's a great overarching thing, because really what the coaches are that we're training and what we're doing is we're helping people be better leaders. Right? We're not coaching the business. That is, what I would call business coaching. And that's actually kind of consulting, how to make your business more successful. That's not coaching the way we define it. Leadership coaching is, as I said, helping leaders be more effective. And that starts internally and then it rolls out to the team, which has benefits for the organization. Executive coaching is the highest level of leadership. And so working with executive coaches is sort of an extension of leadership coaching. I've seen a lot of people call themselves executive coaches because they want to move into the space of executive coaching, but it can be tricky because until or unless you either have experience as an executive or you've been coaching for a while, executives might not be as open to coaching from people that are just hanging it up on their shingle saying, I'm an executive coach.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think I entirely answered your question. I went over here. What did I miss?
I think you are answering it. You're describing it really clearly. If I'm a new coach and I want to move into executive coaching, what's some of the guidance around that?
Yeah. Well, again, there's a little bit of a distinction. Like when you say I'm a new coach, like newly trained.
Newly trained. Yeah, newly trained, but I might have some corporate background, corporate experience. I've transitioned into coaching.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that because I'm simplifying it, but I'm going to divide it almost into two streams. There are folks that might have been an executive, been in corporate experience for a while, and they can leverage some of that experience into their coaching work.
Right.
That said, and something that we talk about in the article is that can provide its own challenges because people can be like, oh, great, I've got lots of wisdom to share. I'm going to go become a coach. And it's like, no, because coaches are not advisors. They're not mentors. They're not trainers. They're not consultants. Coaches are really listening to that person and helping them come up with their own answers.
Beautiful.
Right. And so, so some people who have, say corporate experience or executive experience that might want to leverage that into coaching need to unlearn their advice muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the work that they've got to do. And then for folks that maybe don't have as much corporate experience, but want to step into that, you got to get some of that experience. That doesn't inherently mean you have to go be in a corporate setting, but you might choose to do so, like to start getting more experience coaching people in a corporate environment. Or looking at becoming an internal coach in a company, right? So developing some of that so that even when people come to you with the like, well, tell me, should I do this or do that? It's like, well, no, I'm coaching you. I don't need to be an expert in your life or in your work or in your company or in your industry, but you do still need to have the confidence to meet them there. So then getting some of that corporate experience, eventually you can, if you will, move yourself up the ladder of coaching different folks. But it's a mix, right? Like right now I have I'm coaching a couple CEOs. I've got a bunch of people in C-suite, and I've got a bunch of people that are leaders in organizations, right? So, it's not like I only coach CEOs. It's like I coach people who are senior in an organization and essentially in many ways feel like they don't have thought partners.
Right.
Because my experience of executive coaching is at a certain level, what you're actually doing is offering thought partnership. You're a place where they can come to talk the stuff out that they can't talk to their staff about, right? They can't talk to, I sometimes think about this when I'm coaching female leaders. It's like they can't tell their directs. They can't tell their peers because they don't want to look, weak or whatever, blah, 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 and they can't tell the people they report to. So who are they telling their challenges to?
Yeah.
Their coach.
Their coach.
Yeah.
And so that right there is, so for folks listening who it might be their role to bring in external coaches, that's one of the many reasons that Signy's just highlighted. You're bringing them in so that your leaders have thought partners, have a place to go and be vulnerable, to move emotion, to explore their internal world, right? All of the things that it's actually just not safe for them to do with their direct reports, their peers, or their higher ups. And so, okay, in this moment in time then, with what we've been talking about, with what's happening with humanity, why now? Like, why would an organization invest in external coaches? I'm going to keep it on external coaches right now, and then we can talk about the other things that they might invest in.
Right. Well, some of the stuff that we were talking about before about the return on investment, right? Like when you're looking at bringing a coach in, there's a few things. You are getting what you just said, that non-biased person that they get to have the conversation with. And also someone who can be really real and straight with them. Like one of the things that I appreciate in the coaching relationship is how much those people want straight up feedback. Mm-hmm. So the more senior you become in an organization, the less feedback you're getting, because people are like, oh, that person could fire me. I'm not going to tell them what I'm actually thinking. And so they can go merrily along their path saying, well, people would let me know if I was off track, so I'll just keep going. And so to have that person who's willing to say, hey, I notice you seem to have this habit. What's behind that? What's the impact? Is it actually working for you, for your team, for the organization? Right? So someone who's able to give that feedback either through a structured mechanism like a 360 or other assessment tools, or through like actually giving direct commentary about something they're seeing in the moment.
So valuable.
It really is. I mean, that's the goal. There's not sometimes, every time I'm doing corporate engagement, I have a 3 or 4-way meeting with the person I'm coaching, with their boss, and with the HR person, usually at the beginning of the coaching and then again at the end of the coaching, kind of like bookmarks. And not only am I getting to make sure that HR person and that the manager is on board with the goals that we've come up with, right? So there's like actually this validation that that's what needs to be worked on. They also now are engaged in supporting that person inside the organization, which is a really important part of it. But also, I get to watch that person interact with their boss and with the HR person and give them feedback later. Like, I had one guy I coached, this was years ago, and he was enthusiastic and dynamic and a real talker. And I remember being in that 3-way meeting with his boss, and he would just talk and talk and talk like he did. But he would talk over her. Mm. He would talk over her. And I have no doubt, and I was doing some 360 work with him, that there was sort of this perception that he didn't respect her as a female boss, et cetera, et cetera. But I would give him that feedback from the 360, like, oh, no, I totally respect her. And I could hear by the way he talked about her that he did, that this one particular habit was an issue. And so I remember that meeting, and I'd already designed it with him. Like, if something comes up, are you open to me talking about it? He's like, absolutely. So it came up in the meeting. He talked over top of her, and I said, I'm going to pause you right now, and I'm going to observe that you just talked right over top of her. And he was like, oh, and I watched her face and I watched his face. I was like, this could go all kinds of wrong. But on her face was this, thank you.
Thank you.
Like, and I had the permission to do that, to say that. And it wasn't in a public environment. It was just the three of,
Yes.
So it worked, and it was transformative.
So transformative. Okay, there's a couple. One, if you know Signy is fierce. It's one of her like unique selling propositions of who she be as a coach. She is fierce, fiercely loving. And you do it in a way that's respectful and holds the whole person. So knowing that both of these people feel held when you did that. But you're speaking also about how important that designed alliance, that setup you did in the beginning. And I think this is a lot of important information for people who are going to buy executive coaching, and then coaches who are wanting to move into the sector of work.
Yeah.
Build out the way you set the stage for this kind of work, because then you can be fierce like Signy for the sake of, right? Because everyone's on the same page. There's an awareness of what we're collectively working on. They're all enrolled in the plan. Anything else around like setting these, what do you call those context meetings at the beginning and then the completion? What do you call them with the executive and HR person?
HR person, I just call them 3-way, 4-way meetings.
3-way or 4-way meetings. Yeah.
But it's interesting. So inevitably, I will have already met with my client, right? So most people will know this. Maybe it's actually valuable for some of the corporate folks. I will start by having a fit conversation, chemistry conversation with that coachee. And that coachee will hopefully be talking to 2 or 3 different people to sort of see where they feel they can bring their full self. That's what we're talking about with fit or chemistry. Like they can be real, they can be vulnerable, they can bring them full selves. So then they pick a coach, great. And then you have a first session where you're getting to know each other, which means the coach is getting to know the coachee. And in that, for me anyway, I'm definitely doubling down on what are their goals for this 6 months coaching engagement. Okay. right? So I'm getting them to look at what the goal is in sort of a high level. And we're looking at just 2 or 3 of those because there's not, you can't move the dial on 6 to 20 things. So 2 or 3 things, some of the subsets, like how are you going to get there? These are the steps. These are the action items. Then the key success indicators. How will they know they are successfully moving us forward? Like 6 months from now, how will you know you did well? And then what's the impact on the organization, right? To show that they're still connecting it to the value of the organization, the ROI.
Beautiful.
So that first session, they're doing that. The second session with them, we're locking it down to make sure that they're comfortable with that. And I'm actually talking to them about what that 3 to 4 way meeting is going to be like. They're going to drive it. I'm going to be a witness. They're going to go through those goals. They're going to ask for support. And I'm going to watch.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This is so empowering.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And so I'm designing the alliance, what you're describing in that very first session with the coachee. We're not necessarily designing the alliance here, but when I'm working with an organization, I make sure that HR partner knows what it's going to look like. They're not getting confidential information. If I'm working, whoops.
You got some thumbs up.
If I'm working with a number of people on a team, they might ask for themes. If there's a group of coaches working with a group of leaders, they could ask for general themes, what people are working on. But, that's already established with the HR provider, like way before we go into the individual coaching.
Brilliant.
And I'm not talking to the HR person unless we're doing a 360. I'm not talking to that HR person. I'm not talking to the manager of the person, outside of that, because my allegiance at this point is to the coachee and how to support the coachee.
It's awesome. This is so helpful. And again, we'll put the article in the link, but I think the article really, it sets the stage to how executive coaching is different and what you might need to think about that you haven't yet, if that's the path you're taking, and if you're wanting to bring executive coaching inside your organization. Signy, what keeps you doing this work?
What a fun question. It's probably, I don't know, maybe it's similar for all coaches. Like the getting to have this kind of impact on an individual fills my heart, right? Like getting to have a front row seat to these people taking transformative steps that they would have no idea how to do it otherwise. I mean, they could look around, they could maybe read books, but they're too busy for that. They've got like a full life going on. So to have me almost be like their librarian, their curator of, these tools. And these are some good articles to read. And these are some mindsets you might need to pull in, like to have someone curating that so they can get there faster, right? After 24 years of coaching, I've seen a lot. And so for me, I can pretty quickly be like, oh, this is what's important to that person, and really let a lot of the extra stuff drop. It's like a customized curriculum.
Yeah. And because you're a brilliant instructional designer of learning and development and deliverer of that. So it's like having Signy Wilson on your team, you get like more than a twofer. You get like I don't even know, 1,000 for.
1,000 for.
1,000 for. Yeah. So
I want to circle back on what we were talking about with design with the 3-way/4-way conversation. So you have that front end and then having it again at the back end. How did it go?
Yes.
Right. So then asking them, what progress did you see? How did you support? So there's actually that ability in the organization for them to say, hey, this was worthwhile. Yeah. This person changed this, and this, and the impact on we've got the key success indicators to prove it. And the impact on the organization is this.
So important. We need to speak the language and meet our organizational clients where they're at as well, and bring in the metrics piece, right? And it may not always look like, oh, we move this needle by X, but the person is going to grow their leadership, the coachee in this context, so that they can advocate for themselves, which is going to be evidence of the impact of having the coach work alongside them those 6 months.
And that circles me back to the other thing I love about it is that getting to see a person change is amazing. And then also getting to see the ripple out impact on their team, yes. Right? Like I sometimes talk about like how I love coaching this person because it impacts all of these people, yes. Right? It's not, speaking of twofers, it's not just a one first, like it changes the organization, and that makes it worthwhile because it's like not just one at a time, but
it's a ripple of fur. This is our Canadian coming out, Signy, our Canadian times two over here. Because we have two furs in Canada and ripple furs.
We don't have ripple furs, do we?
I'm making it up.
I love it.
What's your high dream for coaching in the workplace, transformation in the workplace, Femasculine in the workplace?
That's a great question. It's interesting. Like the easy answer would be, everybody has a coach. It's like like a garage, a computer in every home, like everybody has a coach. But it's actually for me, oh, wow, I just got clarity and it feels really solid. That's my integrated feminine speaking.
Beautiful.
It is everybody having these coaching skills. So if what I'm doing in an organization when I'm coaching someone is sneaking in these coaching skills and getting them to be coach-like within their organization, that's the real win for me. And I do a lot of work where I actually take the coaching skills into organizations. You will know the number of people that come to the coach training. So like, I need to escape my organization and I'm a corporate refugee and I've got to I'm going to leave that all behind me. It's like, or we could take this stuff into the corporate setting and transform the corporation, make it coactive.
Yes, please.
So, and even in so doing, we have that kind of that impact. It's like what you were saying, like it's society. Like if we could teach coaching skills in schools, right? I'm reminded of, the work that CTI and other, specific, I'll let you speak to your side of it if you want to, but like bringing this into prisons.
Yeah.
If we can bring the coactive skills into prisons, like we're upskilling people to be their best selves.
Yes.
To really be in relationship with the people around them. Goosebumps.
Total goosebumps. I know these skills are they're life skills. They're gold. We need more of it. I'm not wanting to end. I want to ask. I'm feeling the arc, and I'm not wanting to leave you yet. I want to know from you a leader or a coach or a person that had a significant impact on you. And you don't need to share like their name, but maybe a bit of the qualities of the person and the essence of this individual. Because part of what we're pulling out is what are the qualities of these coach-like leaders?
Yeah, the person that comes to mind is a person that you and I both love deeply. And yeah. And I actually haven't been coached by her, but I have co-led with her and been coached that way. Like she's curious, but also has an opinion. She is fierce and full of love, right? She will stand for me or my dream or what's most important, or the thing that I can't even see underneath. She will stand for that in the moments when I can't stand up, right? Like, yeah. And that's what coaches can do, right? They can help us know our magic, our wholeness, our heart, and just shine the spotlight on it until we can see it for ourselves. That's the magic.
And it's taking me back to the Blue Horizon Hotel when, can we say her name?
Yes.
When you and Joni Marr were my co-leaders and you were helping me connect to what I can't be with in the most fiercely loving, embodied way.
Yeah.
The two of you as a team, it's magic. Like it really is. And so I don't know if you're getting to lead as much together now that we're doing more virtual work, but I was of the generation of the Signy and Joni brand, and I'm so grateful because I received so much.
Sometimes referred to as Sejoni.
Sejoni, yes. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people got Sejoni'd.
Yeah.
I think that's a verb.
That's a verb. And what a cool part of your journey, and I'm sure she would say her journey, that you got to work so closely with someone that you loved so fiercely, and you developed each other, right? Constantly in front of the room. That's part of the model. It's part of the work.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, and I love as you say that, because it is that. I mean, that's what makes coaching powerful, is that, and powerful coaches are people that keep growing themselves. Right? Like what I was just saying about how, like, I've recently wanting to go back to student mindset. It's like, I want to be in that seat, because growing myself is what makes me a good coach. It's what makes me a good leader. It's what makes me my best self. It's one of the things that I try to, embed into all the people I coach, all the executives. Like, this is not, yes, we're coaching for 6 months, or maybe we extend it to 1 year, but like, this is a lifetime thing. If you want to be a leader, a true leader, you need to continue to explore underneath the surface.
Amen to that. That's like, just dropping the mic on that. And not just coaches, our colleagues, our community of colleagues, but humans. Like, if you're listening to this, we all need to be working on ourselves, because that's how we create this new world together. It's not going to happen on its own. We're building it by doing our inner work.
And that's a piece for me around that I also care deeply about, which is personal responsibility. It is so easy, as you were talking about earlier, the distorted masculine and feminine, which is the victim and blaming and that whole thing. It's like, this is a world in which we need to take personal responsibility for our actions, for our mindset, for our choices, all of that. And when we don't do that, let's see what it does with this. No, when we don't do that, that's part of what I think is causing some of the challenges we see today. And there's a lot of them.
There's many.
Yeah. And it circles back. I know we already did a lot of talking about decolonization, but when I think about what I did in the process, one, I realized I was, internalized capitalism had taken root in me. Mm-hmm. Second thing I did is I actually made a list of all the things that I was measuring myself on. And there were things like how many emails I responded to, what my response time was, how much I'm making, how many clients I have, how many likes I'm getting, like this list of things that I think we're all kind of chalking ourselves up against.
Yeah.
And then I started making a list of what I wanted to measure, and it includes things like how much of my own internal work am I doing? Mm. As I said, how many neighbors can I call in an emergency? I mean, I sometimes jokingly say, how many naps per lifetime?
Yes.
But it's like, what are the things that actually I need to be measuring? How kind I am to people, how many sustained relationships I have. Like, how about some of those?
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And
well, we can take all that and put it at a systems level, at an organizational level. We've been talking a lot about the old ways of measuring and planning. They're falling by the wayside. So what are the new key KPIs that are actually going to help us be architects of this new world, that we work in wellness?
Yeah, that's what we're measuring. It's not just what do the stakeholders feel, what is our stock doing? Those things. Let me bring on a thunderstorm for you.
There you go.
Yeah. And I love that. How do we take that to an organizational level? And it's going to be people that are doing their own internal work that are going to be the ones at the organization that will lead the charge of that.
Those of you that are in those roles, we want to hear from you. And Signy would be a great partner to do that work in. You've heard many different ways that Signy could support you and your organization. How can people find you? Again, there's celebration happening on Zoom because people want to connect with Signy Wilson. This will be in the show notes, but tell us, like, just a high level how they can find you and your incredible work.
Yeah, I mean, some of the easiest ways, as you say, it'll be in the show notes, but LinkedIn, I'm the only Signy Wilson in the world, so it's easy to find me. Fantastic.
Amazing.
And also my website, which is signywilson.com. You have to spell it correctly, which not everybody does. It's Signy. Wilson is, as you can guess. But absolutely, reach out. And as you said, and one of the things we'll put in the show notes is, I did a video on significant living and I did a video on Femasculine to kind of give you a flavor of that. So know that if you want to understand more about it, you can watch those videos, and they're short, just to like give you a bit of it. So.
Thank you for taking the time to do that for our listeners and for saying yes to this.
Thank you any time with you is joyful for me, and getting to talk about coaching and this world that we love, and change and growth and leadership and expansion. Boom.
Boom. Boom. Thank you.